Welcome to Recruiter Prep, Stacy. We are so honored to have you as a guest on our featured interviews. As many of our other interviews are all about, we are keen to learn about your journey in recruiting and what you have to say to our students, as well as anyone interested in becoming an agency recruiter. So yeah, Stacy, why don't you kick it off and give us a little rundown of your career track record, your background in recruitment.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. So thanks for asking me. So my journey is a little bit different than most of the people that I've encountered that have been really successful in this business. So when I came out of school, I got into real estate and property management. I did that for 3 years out of college and quickly found that the people that made money were developers. And I didn't want to be poor. So I just started networking and telling people I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And I ended up getting an interview at a hedge fund. And at the time, I didn't even know what a hedge fund was. I had to Google what it was. This was before the financial crisis. And I ended up being a jack of all trades for that firm, reporting to the C-suite. I did a little bit of internal recruiting, investor relations, business continuity planning, but I was a jack of all trades, master of none. But fortunately, the person that I reported to at that hedge fund, so I'll shout out to Jackie Dar, my old boss. People in Milwaukee would likely know her. She's really well known and respected. She had worked in search earlier in her career. And she was like, I think that you could be a headhunter. Because a lot of what I did at the hedge fund was figuring people out, trying to, bridge the gap in communication. And so I just started networking and learning about the business. And this is when I was 30. So I interviewed for like a year trying to find the right spot. And on the same day, I got an offer from Kohl's Corporate doing a real estate type job, which I knew I could do. More money, Fortune 500 company at the time, super path of least resistance, or I had an offer that was like 10 grand less, high failure rate, recruiting for accounting and finance professionals, which at the time I probably knew just the people that I had worked with at the hedge fund, no one else in that area. And then I went and I said, you know what? If I don't try it, I'll never know. So I'm just going to give it a shot because I can always go back to real estate or property management. And I've been here ever since. So that was 2010 when I got into the business.
Awesome. And how has your career progressed over the years once you broke into this new industry? Kind of what did you end up doing and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so when I started in 2010, we were basically coming out of the Great Recession. I mean, we had 5 contingent jobs on the board and I had no idea like if that was good, if it was bad. I thought it was great. I was like, oh my God, these are amazing companies. They're all contingent senior accountants at Fortune 500 companies. And looking back, I'm like, wow, we didn't have anything going on when I started. But I'd worked under somebody that had been successful, but it had a very, very different style than myself. And so I was kind of on my own and then ended up making friends with other people that I could relate to and just figuring it out. So I was the first person hired underneath the leader of our practice in Milwaukee. We then built that team up. After 4 years, I was kind of like, well, I'm kind of bored. I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I'll start a side business. Maybe I'll move. I knew I wanted to do recruiting, but I just didn't want to do recruiting on that team. And so then they promoted me and relocated me to Chicago. And so then I was tasked to build the Chicago market for my last firm, which was, and I love your term, it was a grad shop. I didn't know that at the time, but I was one of the people that they hired that wasn't a grad. But so anyway, after 10 years of training, and going on the hamster wheel of being that player coach, recruiter, and then training tons of recruiters, I just decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I came to where I am now, which is Stephen Douglas, and we only hire experienced people. We're more consultants. So it's just a totally different vibe. And I wanted to work around people that were more successful than me. and that I could really learn from. So that's kind of where I am on my evolution. And so I lead the Midwest region. When I started, I was like, I absolutely don't want to be a manager ever again in my life. I was burned from just, training a lot of people who weren't really into this business, as I'm sure you know, because you started in a grad shop, right? And
Yeah.
so I was like, I just want to be an individual contributor. I don't want to run my own firm like you do, which I give you mad props for doing that. But I knew that my genius was in the service delivery, and that's what I really like.
Awesome. Awesome.
So,
Great. So it seems like recruitment is something that you've really made your profession after you discovered it in your early 30s, which is actually really common. A lot of the best producers that we've ever met, really, it's that 30-year mark, just that exact 30, when they're 30 or, even 31, that's when they find it. And it's like, this is it for me. So for you, when you broke into this job, you had never done it before, other than what you said earlier, is a little bit of internal recruiting, definitely a lot of outreach and sales, but not really like headhunting service, specifically, because it is its own niche. So when you first broke into it, what were your thoughts? What was it like for you? What kind of happened when you first got into the business?
it was terrifying. It was
Mhm.
really scary because I feel like it's hard enough to learn how to recruit and source and how to get people's attention and then have them open up to you and figure out all of that, just recruiting.
Mhm.
And then you have to learn about all of the positions and what makes someone qualified. And so I had to learn both lanes because I was starting from ground zero. But I also had business experience. I had 10 years of business experience behind me, so it wasn't as hard as a recent grad. But I mean, those first 3 months, I almost gave up. 100, like every single day, I was like, this is a nightmare. I don't think I can do it. I can't get on the phones. I had total call reluctance. And then my manager at the time, clearly, I think anybody within a 50-mile radius could tell that I was miserable. He was like, you don't have to do this. Like, nobody's going to make you do this. Like, it's okay if you don't like to do this. And then, I mean, it was a challenge. And so I was like, what? I'm going to be super successful. I'm going to get over myself. I'm just going to make tons of mistakes and not care how stupid I sound. And that's when the magic started to happen. Like,
I
I
love that.
just totally trusted in the people around me. And if what they said didn't authentically come out of my mouth and hit, then I would just constantly work on it. And that's the thing that I love about this business too, is that it's always changing and evolving. And there's a million ways to do this business. And so if you have a growth mindset and you get bored easily, this is a great profession for somebody like that. But most people aren't like that.
Awesome. That's so inspiring, because I know you said at the time you had two paths that you could have pursued. One is your more classic, like you put it, road of least resistance. And then you have this other unknown, super challenging, scary, intimidating. How did you even have the courage to say no to a higher offer that's more guaranteed? Because I think so many people, whether they're experienced recruiters or even thinking about coming into recruiting, any professional really has a fear, mindset. A fear mindset is very common. So how did you push through that and ultimately make the choice that changed your life?
I just always knew if I bet on myself and put all the chips on myself, I can't lose. Because I knew I was never going to let myself down. And I wasn't going to let my husband down. Oh, and I had a newborn at the time as well. And now I have two. So it was like failure. Failure for me was not an option. I was going to figure it out. And if I was going to fail, I was going to go down a blaze of glory. But I always knew that the path of least resistance doesn't go away. It's always there. If I needed to pay the bills, I mean, I could wait tables. It's how I put myself through college. So I'm like, well, you know what? If this doesn't work out, there's always a fallback plan. And the thing that I ask people is, if you're at a major crossroads and you ask yourself, what if at the end of my life, I regret not trying this. If the answer is yes, you got to try it. Because otherwise, what's the point? You got to live your life authentically for whoever you are, not who somebody around you in your circle says you should be, or your parents. I know you talk a lot about your parents and their influence on you. I mean, my parents had a ton of influence on me too. And trust me, they were not excited about me getting into a high commission sales job that I could have gotten without a degree.
Right. Right. Yes, there is a lot. That's a great point, actually. The stigma against sales, I think, is as prevalent as it is today. It's a constant. And I'm curious, from your perspective, why do you think that is? And what are your thoughts on a sales career and, being a salesperson?
Yeah, I think a lot of people hear the word sales and they think it's a dirty word. Like, oh, this person's going to try to jam something down my throat that I don't want. And I think a lot of inexperienced salespeople sell first and then they don't make a sale. You need to seek to understand before you sell. And when I said we're consultants, a lot of my conversations go nowhere. Right? So you've got to be willing to put in the time and actually care about the people that are sitting in front of you and trying to solve their problems. So the cool thing about recruiting versus other sales professions is, guess what? We're not selling a widget that might be the bright, shiny object of 2015 and is now obsolete in 2022. Or you've got all this back end of support that may or may not work. That's what I love about this career, is if you get a client that you absolutely love, you cultivate that relationship, you become an extension of their brand. And guess what? If you find out that a company isn't one that you personally connect with, you know what? They don't have to work with you. You don't have to work with them.
Right.
So it's beautiful, and it's the same on the candidate side too. But if you're really focused on solving problems and you're a student of the business, like, the possibilities to really change people's lives for better and the possibility to completely change the trajectory of a team is just so impactful. And, not to sound cheesy or something, but that's why I'm so excited about this business, because you really do impact people's lives.
Absolutely. And I think from your experience, just being in the industry, supporting people at senior levels and junior levels, I think, and also training and managing people, what do you want to share with people considering this career as it relates to just like what to be prepared for? Because you shed some light on that earlier when you were talking about such a difficult adjustment for those first 3 months. So, what should people be prepared for when they're dealing with these senior placements? Because you're going to come in, probably supporting mid to senior placements. Obviously, you had the gravitas with the business background, 10 years of experience under your belt. But even that was challenging. So what do you want people to know about, to be prepared for as they take on this role?
Anything that's high risk, high reward in life, if it was easy, you would make no money.
Absolutely true.
Right? So you've got to be prepared. If you want to achieve extraordinary things, you have to put in extraordinary effort, period. So however hard you think it is, double that. And different people have different challenges. I trained a person who was a total natural at this business. Like, she got her first placement in 2 weeks. She was off to the races. She was fabulous. And I was like, hold your horses. Like, you had a real start that was awesome out of the gate. That is not how it is every single day. And she would tell new people like, oh, it's easy. You make some calls, you make some matches, you get some placements. And I was like, don't listen to her. There will be good days and there will be bad days. And the more no's you get, the closer you get to yes. And you just have to really stay positive and not take a lot of the stuff that happens in this business is out of our control. And you can try to guide people and coach them and tell them, I've seen this movie before, and coach them about what you think will happen. But there will always be things that you will be like, oh my God, I never thought that was going to happen every single day if you put yourself out there.
Yeah. And to your point, that's such a great example, because whether it's someone like you described who naturally is gifted in this, just happens to be with their life experiences more attuned to it, right? But that could lead to somebody, like you said, especially with today's market being so good, they come out of the gate and it's like party, yay. And then all of a sudden recession hits, all the wheels come off. That is where inevitably every single producer is going to go through. And of course yourself, COVID happened, right? So from your perspective, can we talk a little bit about like perseverance and dealing with the highs and lows? Because you caution this individual from just being so rosy, because there's this balance between optimism and realism. And if you actually are too optimistic, you could be very disappointed and very upset, and possibly quit. So what are your thoughts on that whole dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I listen to podcasts that start my day with either John Gordon's Positive You or Ed Milet or somebody that's really good in business that's inspirational, so that I can start off my day with, you know, something that's really positive, that keeps me grounded. But you've just got to be ready for the waves of the highs and the lows, and just try to stay as even as possible. Because if you're really good at this business, you have the highs and you will have the big lows. If you don't, you're not doing it right.
You're not busy enough.
You're not busy enough, right? And really reaching out and finding the people. If you're in a firm, or, well, of course, if you're starting out young, you should be starting in a firm of some sort. Or not young, but like if you're starting this as a new career, right? You've got to seek out those people that are crushing it. And if there's nobody crushing it in your firm, then you need to get out of that firm, because you have got to be surrounded by excellence. That's the only way that you yourself will become as excellent as possible and really find your own voice, because you don't ever want to be just like somebody else, because then you're a poser. You want to have the most authentic, best consultative version of yourself and bring that A game every single day. And that's when the magic happens. But sometimes that magic happens in year one, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years. So it just depends on the person.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great segue into what qualities do you think one needs to have, whether it's somebody that you mentioned earlier who has these natural qualities, you know, what qualities could one possess that would increase their odds of making it sooner rather than later? Because, you know, I do think there is a certain, to your point, an expiration day where it's like, if you haven't figured this out in 10 years, you're probably going to give up well before then, right? So what are the qualities that are going to make this person succeed as soon as possible, instead of struggling, you know, month after month, year after year, when it's like, maybe this isn't for you? Being an experienced leader like yourself, what do you see as qualities that predict success in recruitment?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of successful people. I've trained a lot of people. I've trained a lot of people who've gone on to a lot of success. I've also trained people who it just wasn't for them, right? But I think the biggest thing for anyone that wants to maybe go from a 0 biller to 300 biller, a 300 biller to a 500 biller, an 800 biller, you've got to have a growth mindset. You cannot think that you know everything. If you think you know everything, you will fail in this business. If you are not open to taking the hard feedback, like, would you like my feedback on how that call went? Or, you know, that email, like you didn't get the right response rate on it. Let's look at it. The most successful people that I've ever worked with are always sharpening the saw, because everyone, including myself, we always have something that we can improve on. And the sooner you're able to ask someone's feedback that you respect, take that feedback, internalize it, and make yourself better, That's the key, I think, to being a really great recruiter. Number two is you actually have to care about people. Now, some people are wired that they are, it's a balance, right? We're like social workers that like to make money. So I will help people, but I mean, I can't spend my whole day just helping people on the free. I know that you talk about this a lot. I'm probably like not as hardcore as you on that point. I will give people that I won't be able to place counsel, but you know, realizing that that does take away from my revenue generating time and servicing my candidates and my clients that I can place. But you really do have to care about people. You have to love it. And I feel like people that are constantly like their minds turning all the time, that they're a matchmaker. Like if somebody asked me for a plumber, I'd be like, I am on the case. We are going to find the best one in my area. I'm going to send him over. Like, you know, so you've got to have a number of different pieces, but I'm a matchmaker. I also think, you know, you absolutely have to be a great listener. I'm talking a lot on this, but you've got to have the candidates and the clients talking more. If you find yourself talking more in a meeting, it's going off the rails. You have to listen.
Yeah, that's a tough one I struggle with because there is a lot of talking that I like to talk. So it's challenging for, you know, I'd say it's actually challenging for extroverts because extroverts tend to overtalk. So you want to always control yourself. Can't talk too much.
Yeah, and that can be,
yeah.
I work on that too. Clearly, I'm a talker. And it's real easy for someone like us that has a big personality that people like to be around. Like I'll tell somebody who's a little bit more passive, here's what I think you should do. And like, I'll go on and then they'll nod and be like, okay, they'll agree with me. And then it'll blow up because they're afraid to tell me no. Being extremely persuasive in this business can be a good thing, but it's also a double-edged sword. Like if people feel like, oh, okay, I don't want to tell her no, you know, that can work against you, because they're ultimately going to do what they want to do.
Yeah. I think that's something a lot of junior recruiters find out the hard way when they get into the business because they think everybody's actually on the same page and they're very naive and hopeful in that sense. Oh, they told me this, so they must mean it. And then you realize, you know, due to people pleasing or whatever, people are not going to tell you the truth all the time. And it doesn't mean they're bad people, it just means this is part of being a recruiter. It's a big adjustment that you have to kind of start QCing what people are saying to you. But what are some other things that you think really junior recruiters or entry-level recruiters need to know before, you know, as a last note, before anything, before they start their job, before even committing to becoming a recruiter, that you definitely think the industry wants them to know, and that is really important for their likelihood of success and mental health potentially?
This can go for any industry. You know, if you want to be at the top of your game and you aspire to be at the top of your game, you're going to have to work harder, longer, and smarter than everyone around you. And I think that's true in almost every business. I think that a lot of people in recruiting give up right before the breakthrough. So you've got to, when you want to really stop, and that's when most people stop, if you keep pushing. I'm a big fan of Ed Milet, and he just came out with a new book that's entitled One More. Like, you've got to just make one more call, one more rejection, like one more, just keep doing it. And this job sucks until it doesn't suck anymore. And then you become an expert. And now my phone rings more inbound than it does outbound. But guess what? It took me like 6 years to get there. So what people see is the awesomeness of what this job can be, but they're not seeing the foundation of all the work that I put in and everybody at our level puts in to get where we are. And that's the same for every industry. Like, there's really no shortcuts.
And as you've progressed your career, how have you seen that workload change? Because of course, as you become a professional headhunter and really an expert, you're probably not having to work as much as you had to those first 6 to 12 months. So how does the lifestyle change as you progress through your own seniority in the career?
Yeah, part of the reason that I really like this career is because I am not a cubicle person. I like to be out around in the world. I like to go driving places. I love a plant tour. I like to meet people for coffee all around. Do I work a lot less? What I'll tell you is I'm a mom. My husband has a big job. I have a big job. It's all about setting boundaries. You have to be very clear with yourself. What are your boundaries going to be? Because this job, you could work 24/7 and burn yourself out. So even from the olden days to present day, what my schedule was I would start at 7:30 in the morning because I'm an early morning person. I would go until 4:30, pick up my kids, focus on my kids because it's very easy to be on your phone constantly and taking calls. But from 4:30 to when they would go to bed when they were younger, which was usually around 7:30, 8:30, then I would crack open my laptop and I would work another hour. And so now it's different where I always work the core hours. And sometimes I'm working and sourcing candidates from the pool. Like you don't have to be in a cube, right? And then I'll crack open the laptop at night if there's really important things that I need to get done, but it's 100% on my terms. How much do I want to make? How much does my client need me? How much does my candidate need me? When can I pull back? When do I know that I need to push forward? And then I do manage people. So when those people need me and I need to direct my full attention to them, then that pulls me away from my desk because I still run a full desk. So it's just true time management and it's different for every person, but that's what worked for me, just having two kids that are, younger.
And have you ever had to work weekends ever in your career? And what
Oh
does
yeah.
that look like? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% on my terms. So if I like this past weekend, sometimes you'll get to talk to a really great candidate, but they only are available on Saturday at 2:00. Okay, well, I always ask myself, would my competition do this? If the answer is no, I'm doing it. And so I placed a
Brilliant.
lot of people. I placed a lot of people meeting with, like, I do accounting and finance. So everybody always wants big four people. I would meet big four people for coffee on Saturdays during busy season all day long. Guess what? Nobody else would. I would. So
I'm a big fan of Saturday meetings. I used to drive to Jersey to just meet people on Saturdays. I would go to their houses, hang out with their kids, get brunch. I would do like brunch, coffee, lunch, coffee, dinner. Like it would be, and then Walmart shopping. It would just, I would tie it all. One time I went there and grabbed a bike and came home and just like tie it into your day, right? Like what else would you be doing with your spare time? Otherwise, you could be sitting on a beach, sure. But when
yeah.
you're early 20s, early 30s, you want to establish yourself. Yeah, that's a brilliant piece of advice. Work when others don't want to work. It's not sexy. No one wants to hear it. Right now, what's sexy is 32-hour work week. It's, I'm off at this time, respect my privacy. Well, Stacy's out there. She's calling them while you're resting. So this is the brutal truth of, success. And I love the fact that you're dishing out directly to us because we need to hear it. People don't talk about it enough.
Well, I feel like, there's a little bit of, hustle culture. But so how I view it is like recruiting, you're working for yourself, whether you're working for a firm or not, like you're on a variable comp job. So you need, when you're young, especially, it's totally a gift to your future self. And that's another thing that I ask myself, like, if I don't do this because I don't want to, is my future self going to be upset at my past self? Like, and I just need to get over myself and try to give as many gifts to my future self. And that building bedrock of your business. It's your business and your personal brand. Now, if you have a W-2 straight salary job, not the same thing. This is a high commission, all on you type of job. So all of that time and investment is a gift to you.
I love this. I'm jotting these notes in my head. There's so much knowledge and gold nuggets of wisdom in here. I love it. And why don't we talk a little about the reward? Because,
Yeah.
clearly you've done well. So what can you expect in terms of the actual money that you can make on a yearly basis? What does a W-2 look like and how does it progress over time?
Yeah. So the first year that I did recruiting was 2010. And so what I made in 2010 was 108,000, which I was like, yay.
Super great.
I mean, it
Super
was
great.
great. It was nothing to like write home about, right? But I felt like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can make a living. I'm not going to be living out of a suitcase or like crying, running back to my husband saying, I want to, tap out of the workforce or whatever, because I'm a workaholic. So then I was like, oh my gosh, I made over $100,000 in year one. And I like basically had no idea what I was doing, if I was really honest with myself. And people that know me will be like, oh, whatever, that's not true. You did have general business knowledge. But when it came to recruiting accountants and actually recruiting, I knew nothing.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, this is cool. And then I don't remember what I made in year two, but basically for the last 10 years, with one exception being 2020, I've always made over 200. And if I'm having a good year, like I should make something in the 400s. 2020 was the one exception because when I was very unhappy at my last firm. I think I will never bash them because it was a great place for me to start my career. It wasn't a great place once I became a high biller. Usually you either work in places that love top billers or places that love recent grads, and they like that because they can tell them what to do. I wanted to be in the latter. So I changed in December of 2019. In hindsight, I would have totally done it again, but I mean, I basically, I tell people I made no money in 2020. My husband gets mad at me because I still made well over 100,000, but I didn't even make like my floor of two because I had a non-compete and their lawyers were calling all the time, and it's hard to change firms once you're really established. So, but in a good year like this, if you can really capture it, you should make for 400K, 500K, 600K. Like the money trees are lined up. You just need to know how to pick them.
I love that. Well, any other last tips that you want to share with our listeners and our students that are trying to expand their career into recruiting?
Yeah. If you're the hardest working person, and that's usually what and who you are in your regular job, and you're upset because the person in the cube next to you isn't as good, but you only make $5,000 or $10,000 more than them, and you have a burning desire to like go out and do something amazing, this could be the job for you. Because that was me. Because I was always upset that I was making just a little bit more, but that I was always bringing it. And the other thing I would say is take those big commission checks and invest them in passive income. So if you hit a bump in the road someday, like my goal is to get $100,000 in passive income annually through real estate, which is also something that we have in common through long-term hold properties and VVROs. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a masterclass in and of itself. I think both experienced recruiters and new recruiters can benefit from watching this whole video multiple times a week. So Stacy, thank you so much. We really appreciate your expertise, knowledge, and tips.